What you've done is when you say, "Oh no, if you need to go read and study the Bible," some of us have actually done that, and it's one of the reasons that we're atheists. It's a primary reason. Some of us actually read it and studied it in detail. What you've done is not read and studied the Bible. You've read a passage, and then you've gone out and found apologists who have given you excuses in order to rationalize it. The fact of the matter is, the book says X, and I don't care how you read it or what you read into it, you can't make it say not X. And every time you attempt to do so, you represent that you are dishonest, you are not interested in actual dialogue, you're here to preach. This is my show, and you don't get to preach on my show.
And by the way, we've already given him too much time.
Yeah, way too much. We got Mike in Oklahoma City. How are you?
Hey, that's a tough act to follow, but I'll try. My question is I wanted to clarify something. Did he say that, was it evangelicals have more abortions, or was it theists have more abortions? I wasn't sure.
The national statistics that I've got hosted on a couple of my videos show that I just did screenshots of news reports where evangelicals have a higher divorce rate in the United States.
Oh, no, the part where you're talking about abortion.
Abortions too.
They have higher per capita.
Right, they have more abortions than non-religious people in the United States. Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, not cool, but all right. My question is basically, if the Christian worldview is true, and when Christians die, they immediately get to go straight to heaven, which is a perfect place to go with no suffering or anything. And if the atheist worldview is true, that when you die, you cease to exist, you would expect to see Christians living a life on earth that's kind of reckless, because, who cares? If you die, boom, you get to go straight to heaven. But, atheists, you'd expect to see them living a very careful, don't want to die because I still got 30, 40 more years. I don't want to end it right now. But in actuality, you see the opposite. What would, how would you, if someone thought, isn't that interesting, how would you address that? This is obviously not an argument for anything, just an interesting observation.
Well, I don't know that I see the opposite. I mean, I'm sure that there are exceptions. I mean, it is kind of strange that that those who realize that they have this one life value it as they do. I mean, we tend to value most that which is rare, and when we have this one life, and this is all we get, and some of us were in the unfortunate situation where we realized that that's all we had, and we weren't going to be reincarnated, and we weren't going to go to heaven, and none of that, and all of that was untrue. We realized that rather late in life, speaking for myself.
Me too.
And so I realized that I've wasted all this time, and now everything that I have left is all that there is, and I want to make the best of that. And the only immortality that I will ever have is how well I'm going to be remembered, and that's going to be temporary. But it's the investment that I make in other people, in promoting other people's lives, that's rewarding for me. I've heard many Christians tell me that if there was no God, that they would run out and kill and rape and maim and cause vandalism everywhere. Why? Would that bring you joy? I mean, it's not possible to do that. We are a societal animal. We grew up in nurturing communities. There are deviants, of course, but most of us, by and large, want to be part of community. We want to be respected. We want to be loved. It's natural. It's part of being a social animal.
Yeah, and I think most of the Christians who present that argument are, in fact, being dishonest and exaggerating to try and make a point which is flawed about morals. The other thing is that, I agree with you on some level with what you're saying, and we've talked about it before, in that if people really believed what they say they believed, seriously, then perhaps the greatest act of love one could express is like one of the many mothers who have killed their children in order to send them directly on to heaven so that they wouldn't have to risk potentially becoming polluted by a sinful world and going to hell. And if Christian theology is correct, then that may be the most loving act one could ever do, which would be to damn oneself to hell in order to guarantee that one's children get to live forever in heaven. The thing is that I think that, along with the example you gave, tend to kind of be one-dimensional. They're only looking at one aspect of this. And while it would be true, if that's all we ever looked at, the real picture is a lot more complex. There's a lot more intricacy, and that's what Aaron was talking about. It's not just about how many years of life do I potentially have left, and is there an afterlife? It's about the fact that even most of the people who self-identify as Christian or theist, I don't see many of them having that interfere greatly with their day-to-day lives. They get up, they go to work, and yes, I know there are some who pray first thing in the morning and pray all day long and thank God for everything. But by and large, you know, if I walk into a strip club, I don't think it's peopled with atheists. If I am, and by the way, I also don't think there's anything wrong with it. If I am out and I drive by a prison, I don't immediately think that the prison is entirely populated with atheists. It's absurd. I think that the population is, for the most part, going to be similarly represented inside those walls as it is outside, although there's some evidence that atheists may be underrepresented in prisons. The evidence that we have contradicts, as you're pointing out, what you might expect for each individual aspect of belief. But I think when taken on a whole, the evidence bears out exactly what we should expect in a more broad view of individuals and beliefs and actions.
Yeah. But there's one other thing I need to mention too, is that while you would think that an eternity and an afterlife would devalue your current life, I mean, people who are still Christian and who believe that they have an eternal life and that this world is worthless, many of them do say that this world is worthless, but by and large, most of them are still into preserving their own lives, and they're still into doing charitable acts for other human beings. That, you know, he said you would think that if you literally interpreted, you might be doing them a favor by killing them, but it's not the way that people act. So your statistics either reflect that regardless whether you're religious or not, these things still occur to you, that good and bad things still happen, that we have good and bad people on either side, or there are, as I mentioned before, there are the negative correlations where things that you would expect would only be occurring among non-believers actually occur more often with believers. So we don't have any statistic. It would be fairer to say that we don't have any statistic that supports a moral advantage with belief.
Well, and I think I'm getting confused by your answer. I didn't have anything to do with morals. I'm just saying I'm only talking about like people's level of risk averseness. I'm not making the moral argument that theists are more moral.
I just think
my question. Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah, if it's true that when theists, or I guess let's just say Christians, I don't know about every theist religion, but when Christians die, they're immediately sent straight to they believe a place where, you know, it's like infinite happiness, it's perfect, no suffering or anything. So if that were true, you would expect them to live a life that was kind of careless, because who cares if they die, they get to go straight to heaven.
No, actually, I wouldn't.
You don't agree with that?
No, not completely. See, here's the thing: is you're partially misrepresenting Christianity in this oversimplified thing, but your whole argument, which is why we addressed it the way it did, goes down to a belief versus action thing, and it has nothing to do with whether or not their beliefs are true. What we're talking about is whether or not they strongly and truly believe what they claim to believe. For example,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. I'm saying if what they believe is true, then that's how you expect them to act.
No. If they truly believe what they claim to believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, now you tripped me up. Yeah, that's what I said the first time.
Sure.
Yeah.
If they truly believe what they claim to believe, but what I'm saying is that your representation is an inaccurate oversimplification of what they even claim to believe. I agree with you that they probably don't most likely really seriously believe or aren't perhaps 100% convinced of what they often profess. But I'm saying that by and large, what they profess to believe is in and of itself more robust than that single simple point. I would not necessarily expect people to be living more reckless lives if they believe that they're going on to an afterlife as presented in Christianity, because by and large what's also presented in Christianity is a lot more than just where you go afterwards. That what happens here actually matters. I mean, you know, if you read through, for example, I don't want to necessarily go down a rabbit hole of who's a true Christian, who's not, but by and large I think most Christians would believe that the words that are attributed to Jesus, perhaps the Sermon on the Mount, whatever, might represent the best advice from the God that they believe in on how to live their life. And there's very little in there about, if anything at all, about what happens after life. And so the people who are living as Christians by and large in most Orthodox settings aren't at all, you know, the afterlife thing isn't always a primary concern.
Okay, I understand. Okay, that makes sense for that side. Okay, so then what about than the atheist side, as far as like how you'd expect and then how you see them actually live.
Well, we kind of got cheated out of heaven, didn't we? We don't have one. So
No,
if we're going to enjoy,
as far as like
there's two realities.
They believe 100% that when you die, that's it. You would expect to see them live very cautious.
Hold on a minute.
Maybe they are. I don't know that they're not.
Hold on a minute. We got two realities to face here. One, well, first I have to go back to definitions and just remind you that we don't believe anything 100%. Even disbelief isn't necessarily 100%. We're open to have our minds changed. Okay, that's part of the reason we became what we are. But from this perspective, we've got two realities. One, there's no heaven. So if we're going to enjoy existence at all, this is the only existence we've got.
Yeah.
Do you want to enjoy it? And the second thing to realize is, are you going to die? Yeah. Can you get out of it? No. So between now and then, I mean, does it matter how long that is, or does it matter how good that is? And most of the people, fortunately, that I know, it's how good that is. And that matters more.
I don't necessarily know that atheists are more or less cautious in their life. I don't know that there's evidence to even support the original contention, but I'm with Aaron in that it's not what I would expect, and it's not what I see by and large. What I see non-believers doing is trying to live a life that they enjoy and are proud of for however long it happens to last.
Yeah, it took me forever to find. The only way I was able to find two pieces, and there's a lot more to the puzzle than this. I was able to find for smoking and driving without a seatbelt, which I'm sure we can all agree are great ways to end your life early. It was atheists over, I'm not sure if it was just atheists versus Christian or atheists versus people who believe in some type of a God, but it was atheists were more likely to engage in those two activities.
I'm extremely skeptical at this point, because you might as well be talking about people with mustaches versus people without mustaches. I think the situation is far more complex than that sort of simple analysis is actually going to find.
I would say, do you disagree with the statistic or what it would imply?
I'm disagreeing with the relevance of the statistic.
Okay, so if we're talking about risk adverseness, smoking and driving without a seatbelt are irrelevant?
I'm saying that they're not relevant to whether or not somebody's a theist or a non-theist.
Right.
No, relevant to if somebody's living a life, their level of risk adverseness.
I
don't even necessarily know that that's accurate either. But
I don't see the relevance either. Whether you believe that there's an afterlife or whether you're not, how does that govern whether or not you're smoking? I don't get it. Most of the people I know who smoke happen to be believers, for whatever that's worth.
No, what I'm saying is that somebody may well understand that driving without a seatbelt or smoking cigarettes is a significant risk, and yet their life is such that it's a relatively innocuous thing that they don't consider, and they could be very, very safe in other areas. You could have somebody who's overly safe, perhaps too cautious in a lot of different areas, but also happens to smoke. I mean, I think you're not looking at enough variables in that statistic to actually have anything meaningful.
Yeah, well, but I'm looking at two variables, and you're looking at none, though.
I'm looking at the two you just presented and saying that's not enough.
Yeah, and I think we're adding more to that.
Well, you're adding the possibility that maybe there's some other variables that would say the opposite, but you have no reason to believe that.
No, I didn't.
Well, actually, I'm saying that I think that there are others, and I have plenty of reason to believe it, if for no other reason than looking at my own life.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, you can find me one guy. We're talking about statistics. Yeah, I mean, you can find one guy who's the exception, yeah.
I'm not talking about exceptions. I'm saying the statistics don't say what you think they say.
Okay, why don't you conduct a poll aimed at what you're trying to achieve? Create the statistic yourself. See if you can get with a college or something to find some way of producing a statistic that makes sense to you, that conveys the question fairly. Have other people review it to make sure that the demographic that you're inquiring of matches. Is he still there? Is he gone? Oh, good. We don't have to worry about it then.
I'm sorry that I didn't, buy your 2 data point statistic thing as a risk assessment for humanity with respect to theism. I need more.